There's no doubt, and I say this with all due respect, that Bob Probert is probably one of the greatest fighters, or what they call battlers, in NHL history. His years in Detroit and Chicago made him a household name, but his battles on the ice were nothing compared to his battles he faced off the ice. Now, we provide this information as a public service, not to exploit his memory, but this is what he went through. Now, few players in sports history have had as long and difficult a struggle with alcohol and drug addiction as Bob had during his early years of his NHL career. Although Probert's abuse of alcohol dated well back into his junior hockey days, his addiction problems began to interfere with his pro career by April '86, when he was first arrested in his native Windsor for speeding, driving while impaired, and refusing to take a breathalyzer. 3 months later, he added to his woes by assaulting a Windsor police officer after a fight outside a local bar. The second arrest was the wake-up call Probert needed, and on July 22, '86, he agreed to enter the Hazelden Foundation's rehab facility in Lindstrom, Minnesota, to address his addiction to alcohol. Now, after the first 10 days, he was moved to Abbott Northwestern Hospital in Minneapolis, where he was treated for his withdrawal and other medical symptoms. In total, he spent 36 days in the 2 rehab programs, returning to training camp with a renewed sense of himself. Within 3 months, however, he was in trouble again, as he was arrested by Windsor police while driving while impaired on December 19, '86. On January 13, '87, he was fined $2,000 and had his driver's license revoked after he was convicted of two drinking-related driver's license offenses from the December 1986 incident. At the time, he was acquitted of the more serious DUI charge. Now, on February 11, '87, during the NHL's All-Star break for a rendezvous series with the Soviets, Probert returned to rehab at the Red Wings' insistence, this time checking in to the Brentwood Recovery Center in Windsor. He did not return to Detroit's lineup until the Red Wings' March 2, '87 game at Boston. Under a special work release program, he was granted permission to attend Red Wings practice and games while he was still taking part in the treatment program, provided he had someone from his rehab center to take him to and from all team functions, and he had begun taking advantage of this privilege on February 28, '87. However, around a month later, he was kicked out of the Brentwood program for violating unspecified rules. Probert's troubles with alcohol resurfaced in December of that year, when he was jailed one night in Redford Township, Michigan, for violating his probation related to a previously unreported DUI. Over the next 10 months, he was caught breaking curfew before Game 5 of Detroit's Campbell Conference Final Series at Edmonton, was fined $200 for missing a team bus and flight from Chicago to Detroit on September 20th, '88, during Detroit's '88 training camp. That led to his demotion to minor leagues, which only made the situation grow even worse. On September 23rd, '88, the Red Wings suspended Probert indefinitely for skipping an AHL Adirondack practice and missing a team flight. Detroit insisted that Probert enter a rehab clinic, and he finally checked himself in the famous Betty Ford Center in Rancho Mirage, California, in October '88. Less than 10 days later, Probert left the rehab center despite having more than 30 days left in the treatment program. He eventually flew back to Detroit, and other passengers reported he was drunk on the plane. Probert's agent, Parker Ducharme, reportedly told team officials that Probert had to leave rehab and come back to the Wings because he needed money and was flat broke. The suspension cost him $1,300 per day in lost salary. He was forced to sell his home in Corvette, where he wanted to live with fellow recovering alcoholics in Windsor, and took the medication Antabuse. Under heavy pressure from Ducharme, Detroit finally let Probert rejoin the team on November 22nd, and he made his '89 season debut 5 days later versus Washington. On the day of his return, he personally apologized to all of his Red Wings teammates for what had happened. After his return, he roomed with Peter Klima, who had been going through similar battles with alcohol and other off-ice problems. The Red Wings felt the two players would provide a steadying influence on each other. The arrangement worked for a short while, but problems resurfaced in January '89. He showed up late for a contest against Montreal and was scratched from the lineup with the flu. Detroit later acknowledged that had been covering up for Probert. He was suspended yet again for violating team rules on January 25th. It did not return to the team until the lineup until 10 days later for Chicago. He remained with the Wings until March 2nd, when he was involved in the most devastating drug-related incident of his career, leading to his temporary banishment from the NHL. Sadly, Probert's chemical dependency stayed with him throughout his NHL career, and he even sought help for substance abuse in February 2003, several months after his unofficial retirement from hockey. Now, he made the first of his many negative headlines in November of '86 when he was barred from re-entering the States by American customs agents on November 2nd, '86. The decision early in the '87 season stemmed from Probert's being on probation for having assaulted a police officer outside a Windsor, Ontario bar in July '86. Now, this incident led to his first trip to a rehab. Probert had avoided jail time and had been placed on probation on October 2nd, '86, after promising he would no longer use alcohol. Now, that situation was his right to cross the border was quickly resolved, but Detroit demoted Probert to the minors, recalling him on November 20th. He played well after his recall, but got in his trouble at 1:55 a.m. on December 19th when he was arrested in Windsor for driving while impaired, his second such arrest in 8 months. This time, he was also charged with probation violation. He had driven his car in a utility pole before being arrested. He also charged with violating a probation link to his earlier DUI as assault of a Windsor police officer. His license was suspended and he was fined $500. After arrest, Probert was suspended indefinitely by Detroit, but his suspension was later reduced to just 2 games. Now, he returned to the lineup 2 days before Christmas in '86. Now, here it gets freaky. Probert's NHL career nearly come to an end in March '89 when he was expelled from the NHL after being arrested for attempting to smuggle cocaine over the U.S.-Canada border. On March 2nd, '89, he was driving from Windsor into Detroit with a packet of cocaine tucked in his underwear. Now, the drugs, a total of 14 grams, fell out of his underwear during a strip search by U.S. Customs Service agents on the U.S. side of the Detroit-Windsor tunnel. Police had noticed Probert driving his GMC Jimmy in erratic fashion and noticed evidence of drug paraphernalia and alcohol use in the car, which was occupied by Probert, a man, and 2 women. The street value of cocaine found on Probert was thought to be at least $1,500. Probert was charged with drug smuggling, and he faced up to 20 years in prison and a $1 million fine if convicted. Released on $50,000 bond, he was dealt with harshly by the NHL. On March 4, '89, John Ziegler, then NHL president, banned Probert from the league, and the Red Wings tore up his 3-year, $600,000 contract. At the time, most fans assumed Probert was being banned for life, therefore becoming the 4th player ever given such a ban. He also became the 3rd player in NHL history to be suspended for a drug-related criminal offense, joining Don Murdoch and Rick Nattrass. Murdoch was a smuggler while Nattrass was a marijuana smoker. Red Wings officials said he knew Probert was rumored to have widened his alcohol addiction to use of cocaine and were not surprised by the news of his arrest. He said Probert had refused the team's offers to help him get over his drug problem, denying that he used cocaine at all. Probert was not allowed to apply for reinstatement in the NHL until the legal case against him was closed. Over the course of the following year, he went through extensive rehab for his addiction and also served a 90-day sentence that resulted from his plea of guilty to federal drug smuggling charges. He served his prison time at a federal pen in Rochester, Minnesota. After his release from prison, Probert began skating on March 5, 1990. 2 days later, the U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Service granted him a 90-day work permit, enabling him to work in the States despite being a convicted felon. After earning his work permit, he was finally reinstated by the NHL on March 9, 1990. The league had initially said he could not return until November 1st, '90, but the Wings got the process expedited in time for the '90 Stanley Cup playoffs. Ziegler said he was satisfied Probert met conditions for reinstatement. Despite the NHL decision, Probert was only allowed to play games in the States until the U.S. Immigration Service dropped his orders to have him deported if he were to enter the U.S. from Canada. This situation would last through the '91-92 seasons and part of '93 as he appealed the ruling. When he was reinstated, Probert was finishing his sentence in a Detroit halfway house. After gaining clearance from his probation officer and halfway house director, he returned to practice on March 1990 and made his '89-90 debut in a March 22nd game versus Minnesota. He scored a goal in that contest and in each of his next 2. Despite the difficult year after his arrest, Probert later said that the experience made him a better person. His saga ended when he was released from the halfway house on March 2nd, 1990. Now, when Probert came back and looked at Probert had truly conquered his chemical dependency problem, he found himself, though at a center of controversy, once again a series of events that led to his departure from Detroit. On July 15, 1994, he suffered minor injuries when he crashed his bike into a car while driving in West Bloomfield Township in Michigan. At the time of the crash, a local newspaper reported that Probert's blood alcohol level was 3 times as normal. He was .31. The accident came just 2 days after Probert had been pulled over for erratic driving and had been able to produce his license. At the time of the incident, Probert had been ruled an unrestricted free agent. Given added controversy, Detroit Senior Vice President Jim Devellano decided not to make another contract offer to Probert. On July 1994, the Wings announced that Probert was no longer part of the team. "This is the end," said Devellano. "In my 12 years in the organization, we've never spent more time on one player and these problems than we have on Probert." Now, 5 years after he was nearly banned from life in the NHL, Probert's addiction landed him in more trouble. In a bit of deja vu, Probert set out the entire 95 lockout season after being suspended by the NHL for violating the league's substance abuse policy. The suspension stemmed from a July 50, 94 motorcycle accident, which led to a formal DUI charge against him on July 27, 94. Blood tests from July 15th revealed cocaine in his system, in addition to a high level of alcohol. Probert was not, however, charged with driving under influence of cocaine because he was already facing the DUI charge for alcohol. The charges left Probert facing up to 3 months in jail. Probert's lawyers disputed the police procedures and evidence collection. The police, however, said Probert had threatened officers and workers at the hospital as he tried to draw his blood. Now, a police report said Probert threatened to kill the arresting officers, and on June 8, 94, he had a hearing with NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman to determine the extent of his punishment. On September 2, 94, the NHL announced that Probert had been suspended indefinitely and could not be reinstated until he had completed another drug rehab program. Probert was ordered to enter the ASAP Family Treatment Center in California. The program was set for a maximum of 28 days, but he ended up spending 6 months at the center before he applied for reinstatement in the league, which at the time was dealing with the protracted labor dispute and lockout. He was finally reinstated on April 28, 95, allowing him to resume his career at the start of the 96 season. The ruling was a slight disappointment, since Probert had hoped to play in the 95 playoffs. Now, Probert was already a Group 2 restricted free agent, and he had his status upgraded to unrestricted free agency in July 94 when the NHL ruled that Detroit's June 21st, 94 qualifying offer did not meet the necessary standards. Probert was offered a raise over his base 94 salary of $400,000 with no adjustment for deferred $200,000 in income he'd also been receiving. Free to go elsewhere, Chicago spent big money. 4-year, $6.6 million deal with Chicago. This was 20 years ago. That's almost like, quite terrible. Now, he did win the AHL Calder Cup in around back in '86, and he also was the part of the Brantford OHL team that relocated to Hamilton prior to the '85 season. Now, he was active in numerous charitable causes during his playing days, including work to prevent drug and alcohol abuse, a cause he became involved with after serving his prison time. Now, he ran a hockey camp in Detroit during off-season his playing days with the Red Wings, drawing good feeling from young kids everywhere. But he was unfortunately arrested by police in the early morning hours of June 4, 2004, after a scuffle on the streets of Delray Beach, Florida. He attempted to fight off police officers who were looking to break the fight. He was finally restrained by multiple uses of a taser gun. Police charged him with 3 felony counts, battery on a law enforcement officer, violently resisting arrest, and disorderly conduct. Pending a hearing, he was jailed without bail at the Palm Beach County Jail. Not the nicest place to be, by the way. On February 17, 2005, a jury acquitted Probert of all 3 charges as faced as a result of the incident. Now, when he ended up in Chicago, he was there literally for 7 years. But the legend of Probert was beyond because he's the 4th most penalty assessed player in NHL history, 3,000 minutes, but he could score. He was a good power forward when he was sticking in his game. Now, after he left Chicago, he was placed on waivers by the Blackhawks. Because he was not picked up by any other team, he was advised that his role with the Blackhawks would be limited, or he would be relegated to play in the minors again. On November 16, 2002, he opted to unofficially retire so he could join the Blackhawks radio broadcasting team. He had finished 4th in the NHL's all-time list with 3,300 penalty minutes. Now, his stint with the Blackhawks radio team did not last long. In February 2003, again, he went back to rehab. During the 2003 offseason, he formally announced his retirement. Now, he has been featured in numerous books through the years, including a book called Bruise Brothers, very interesting read by Bob Duff. Now, before he passed away, unfortunately, he had been working on a memoir with Kristen McLean Day, co-writer of Theo Fleury's best-selling autobiography, Playing with Fire. Probert's widow Danny decided to honor his wishes to tell his story and continue with the completion of the book. Now, that tome, Tough Guy, My Life on the Edge, was published on October 26, 2010 by Harper Collins, and you can find it. It's quite good. Now, other incidents as well. He was 2004. He was arrested for allegedly parking his BMW Sport SUV on the wrong side of the street and entering an altercation over drugs with bystanders. Several police officers intervened and had to subdue Probert with tasers yet again and stun guns. He was later acquitted on all charges related to the incident. Now, he was arrested on July 1st, 2005, Canada Day, at his Windsor area lakeshore home for breach of peace, resisting arrest, and assaulting a police officer. Probert's attorney, Patrick Ducharme, advised the media, "I anticipate he will pleading not guilty and I'm going to trial." Probert was arrested again on August 23, 2005 at a bar in Tecumseh, Ontario for violating two conditions of his bail, that he had not consumed alcohol or be in an establishment that serves liquor. He was released after paying $200 Canadian bail, and all charges stemmed from arrest on July 1st were eventually dropped. So he's entering the last phase of his life, but what he left here now, this is a beyond the beyond. He could score. He was a good player. Like 1988, this is unheard of numbers. He played 74 games, 29 goals, 62 assists. 62 points, 398 minutes and penalties. But in the playoffs, he was just as consistent, 21 points in 16 games. So he scored 37 goals that year, with almost 450 minutes in the sin bin. He also scored 20 goals in 92, and the big season, of course, with the Brantford Alexanders, which led him to being drafted in 84, 73 points with 35 goals. And of course, with Windsor Club 240, where a lot of people first heard of him, he scored 100 points in 55 games, including 60 counters. Now, the Probert's passing was formally announced on July 5th, 2010. During a severe heat wave while boating on Lake St. Clair with his children, father-in-law and mother-in-law, he developed what was described as severe chest pain and collapsed at approximately 2 p.m. local time. His stepfather-in-law, Dan Parkinson, the Cornwall, Ontario Chief of Police, attempted CPR to save his life. He was rushed to Windsor Hospital with no vital signs. Efforts to revive him were unsuccessful, and he was pronounced dead later that afternoon. So his life was changing around, but unfortunately, his physical limitations caught up to him. Now, funeral services were held July 9, 2010 in Windsor, and was attended by several former teammates and opponents, including Dino Ciccarelli, Ty Domi, Christine Island, Gerald Gallant, Doug Gilmore, Stewie Grimson, Joey Koser, Brad McCrimmon, Darren McCarthy, and Steve Eiserman, as well as Red Wings GM Ken Holland and owners Mike and Marion Illich. Eiserman delivered a eulogy. In recognition of Probert's love of motorcycle riding, his funeral procession was led by a group of 54 motorcyclists. His casket was transported on a custom-built motorcycle sidecar. He was survived by his wife Danny and 4 children. Now, this is, and even after death, it didn't end. Probert's family announced on September 25, 2010, that his brain would be donated to the Sports Legacy Institute to assist researchers who are studying the effects of concussions and other sports-related head injuries. In March 2011, it was reported that researchers at BU had found evidence of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, in Probert's brain, because the amount of fights he did, I'm thinking in his career in Major Junior, the NHL, in the hundreds. I mean, it's countless. Because we're just going to recap this. We're just talking his NHL numbers, okay? His first season with Detroit in 86, 44 games, 186 minutes and penalties. 87, 221 minutes and penalties, 63 contests. 88, 398 and 74. 89, limited action, 106 and 25. Then 55 and 91, 315 minutes. Then 63, 276, 82, 92, 66, 275, 78, 237. The full season, Chicago 97, 82 326, 99, 78 206. Then he was quiet for the next three seasons, 114, 103, and 176. But a very, very good player in the playoffs, ladies and gentlemen. We're just, okay, 935 total games, 384 points, 163 counters. But in the postseason, 48 points and 16 goals. And, of course, he was part of the Red Wings resurgence of the late 80s. And I keep on wondering, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, was it from birth or just people are around or some people have it? I think Bob Probert had a good soul. I think Bob Probert was a very skilled player. But nobody was going to tell Bob Probert not to be Bob Probert. He knew his role in certain situations. But listen, ladies and gentlemen, you're 45 years old, you're in retirement, you're away from the wars, and you die on a boat in Canada Week with your family around you. So I mean, a lot of good times, but a lot of bad times. But Bob Probert, tough as fucking nails, ladies and gentlemen. And I think everybody that followed the NHL will talk about this and some big situations. Of course, he had a big rivalry with Wendell Clark with Toronto and Quebec. He had two battles with Craig Cox that were just legendary. He had a series of battles with Ty Domi for the Rangers, Jets, and the Maple Leafs. One of Probert's more memorable confrontations was also Genesis of Domi's now infamous belt gesture when he gestured to the MHG crowd as he had a championship title belt about his waist, with Domi remarking at the reporters, "You've been a heavyweight champ for a long time. I still respect him. I've been wanting him for 3 years. I just hope he remembered what got him where he is." Now, he had a career-spanning series of fights with longtime enforcer Stu Grimson, including a fight in December 93 when the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim made their first visit to Detroit. Another memorable fight was December 1793 with former teammate Joey Kocur of the Rangers during a brawl involving several players from both teams. Probert and Kocur had grabbed the nearest opposing player without realizing who it was and continued trading punches even after they identified each other. Later on in his career, he would face Kocur a few more times, who went to the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, according to many people, this is one of the longest fights of all time. Against Marty McSorley, February 4th, 94, McSorley was with the Penguins. Allegedly was timed at 100 seconds. That's pretty good. Several bouts, of course, against Donald Brashear when he was playing Montreal and Vancouver. Now, in the game against Avalanche on January 12, 99, Scott Parker, an aspiring enforcer, skated up to Probert and bared his fists, challenging him to a fight. Parker was at this time heavier, taller, more than 10 years younger than Probert. After circling around each other for several seconds, the two grabbed each other's jerseys. However, the fight was called off via TKO after just 11 seconds when Parker was nearly knocked unconscious from 4 right hands from Probert without throwing one of his own. Rat-a-tat-tat, as we say. Now, he also fought Jody Shelley in each of the 3 periods in a 2-1 Blackhawks win over the Columbus Blue Jackets at United Center on January 10, 2002. The 3 fights are the same 2 adversaries. An NHL match would not be achieved again for 14 years when Evander Kane and Alex Petrovic did it on February 9th, 2016. Now, this is weird. They had a rule, I think, for a while that a second fight you were gone, but you can fight 3 times, but I think it's 1 per period anyway. Now, he was, like I said, kind to his fans. He actively supported youth hockey players in the community and often bought tickets for kids who couldn't afford to go to Red Wings games. He encouraged a young fan in '89 to pursue sobriety and challenged him to a contest, age of which he predicted he would surpass him. By August 18, 2011, that man had been sober for 23 years. Now, I'm like I said, I do this for public service, but ladies and gentlemen, I miss the guy. And you know, if he would have lived, if he would have sobered up, who knows? He could have been assistant for Team Canada, could be part of the Hall of Fame group. But Bob Probert, that NHL as we see it in 2024 is gone. I mean, you knew the goons. Like, I have to say, the goon is the only terminology is. They're skilled players, yes, but Stu Crimson, Kocur, Domi, my buddy Gordy Dwyer, Bobby Probert, Kissio, all these. Every team had a Brashear. It was weird because you know you're going to see three things at a hockey game: hitting, hitting, hitting with the fist, and really good goals. Because it's like you go to a buffet, and NHL games like a buffet. You're going to get different things. You never know what's going to happen. But the anticipation of people fighting. You know, that's why Canadians are so different than Americans. We're peaceful people when it comes to hockey. Toughness is what we see. A good fight. If John Cordick would have not defeated Jay Miller in the 86 playoffs with Montreal win the Cup that year, that was enough momentum. Okay? How did Probert be recognized? Detroit was not a hockey hotbed in like it was. Like, you know, they're out of the playoffs, and Koser was, you know, him and Steve Yzerman, you know, the road that both their talented success. And Koser could score. I mean, but the problem is when you're an enforcer or what you call a grunt, you know, you're gonna fight because that's in you. It's too bad, and I want to just recap this because nobody talks about this. Koser wasn't, Probert, 6'3", 230. Not the biggest enforcer of all time, but not the smallest. But 230 pounds. He must have taken boxing training. He must have taken some kind of physical manifestation to throw the punches because his punches were wicked. Now, if you want to see a lot of Probert fights that are on YouTube, I don't think it'd be considered disrespectful to the Probert family to say he influenced NHL in the ways that the Bettman doesn't want to touch. Because in a bar someplace, Hamilton, Halifax, Quebec City, doesn't matter the language, Alberta, when somebody fights in the NHL, little pity pat fights, there's going to be a guy in the bar, maybe a drunk, or a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old. He said, fuck, that's not a fight. Let me tell you the legend of Bob Probert. Bob Probert was a gunslinger. Okay? He came into town, and he shot the bad guy. Because Detroit's success, he was protecting all these players. And when the Detroit Red Wings won the Stanley Cup, I know deep down that Probert felt good about that. Because he's the foundation of the new Red Wings. And for me, like I said, as a sports journalist and a hockey fan, I miss him every day. I would have loved to meet Bob Probert. I said, who taught you to fight like that? Was it like Youngblood? Was it like his father? You know, Eric Starenko played Rob Lowe's father in Youngblood. He is the man. And, you know, it's too bad that, you know, the card, he lived and he died he lived for the right reason, he died for the wrong reasons. Like maybe could have shot of cocaine, could have weakened his heart, you know, bad blood flow, too many blows to the head. You know, who knows what happened when he turned 55 or 60. So, Bob Probert, who he was the best in NHL history. Probert-esque is the term, the new word for the day. Have a good one. Bye.